Welcome back to the Real Estate 401k Show. I'm your host, Mike Weinstein, alongside Justin, Frederick, and Mr. D-back himself, Dirty Gertie.
Dirty Gertie in the house.
How are the D-backs doing?
Great.
Dude, we're actually, I mean, we had kind of a difficult weekend, but, I think that for the National League, we have probably the toughest division.
For sure.
We have more teams with 70 or more wins, and we have a tough September coming up. But we should do pretty good the rest. And it's not like I'm some avid follower, but I've always been a big baseball fan. My problem is time. So I always go with my ESPN.
And the curveball.
Dude. I always love that up and in. I mean, I'm going yard on you if you're throwing me a fastball up and in. But yeah, if you throw me a curveball, you got me golf teeing off the dirt, man. I suck at them.
All right. Well, anyways, you're going to want to text the word BBA, not a word, a series of letters, BBA to 623-AZ-RECON. That's BBA to 623-AZ-RECON. I think by now, most of America has read something, heard something about the National Association of Realtors being involved in a lawsuit, changes to commissions. And as I've been following the news and reading articles, there's just a ton of misinformation out there. We've got reporters who have never read the settlement and not in the industry, just opining and just saying stuff that's not true. And so for our listeners and for the general buyer and seller out there, it creates confusion of what is happening and how does it impact me. And the things that I'm hearing, are they true or are they not true? And so as we dive into it, I want to be clear that some of these things that we're going to talk about are, especially when it comes down to open houses, are Arizona specific. Some of the interpretations of the rules differ from state to state. So be careful what you hear and read in the media. But the truth of the matter is there's been significant changes. So this all stemmed from a couple of years ago, a lawsuit filed against the National Association of Realtors. And if you work with an agent that identifies themselves as a realtor, they are part of the National Association of Realtors. And so there's a lawsuit claiming that that realtors and the National Association of Realtors were colluding together by forcing sellers to pay commissions. And then now there's a settlement proposal, and then the Department of Justice has gotten themselves involved to be the basically the police, the big bullies, and so forth. So that's a little bit of the history. Here are the changes. Sellers, and I want to be very clear, sellers are not required and no longer required to offer a buyer's agent or a buyer broker anything. If they want to list their house on the MLS and offer a buyer's agent nothing, they are now within their right to do that. So with that being said, how do buyer's agents get paid? And a lot of the situations, Ryan, are going to be buyers might be on the hook for it. Not necessarily they're going to be on the hook, but they might be on the hook. So in Arizona, the Arizona Association of Realtors created two forms: the exclusive buyer-broker agreement, which is decades old. It's just been modified. It's always been there. Mm-hmm. But the new one is the buyer-broker showing agreement. And one of the big changes, it doesn't matter what state you are in, what city, what county, it doesn't matter. In order to tour a home, including new builds, in order to tour a home, you are going to have to sign some sort of an agreement with that buyer's agent to be able to walk in the home. And a lot of buyers are like, well, I'm not signing anything. I don't want to sign anything. Why you make me sign anything? Well, we got no choice. It is what it is.
Sure, and I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are, well, we've already seen a lot of people moving over towards only looking at open houses. I also think that that new home builders are they're seeing a lot of traffic because of this as well. Because you can just go over there. You're not required to sign one if you walk into an open house or if you walk into a new home builder. And furthermore, I think that there's probably some education that needs to happen with those people that are signing BBAs and going to new home builders. A lot of times they think, oh, well, new home builders are abiding by these laws as well. They are not. they are still there's new home builders are still doing what they want, which I'm cool with. But if you have an agreement with your agent that they are going to be representing you as a buyer, and you think that, oh, because I've already signed this, I'm protected and I have representation. If you walk into a new home builder, nothing has changed. You still may be walking in there, and the builder could say, yeah, you might have signed an employment agreement with them, but we have not. So we are going to be excluding any type of communications, and we are not going to allow your agent to be a part of this transaction whatsoever. So if you are out there looking at new homes and you've signed a buyer-broker agreement or even a buyer-broker showing agreement, then you need to be informed that you still need to bring your agent along at least on the first visit in order to incorporate your real estate professional in that transaction and get proper representation.
Yeah, and so to be clear about these forms, the buyer-broker exclusive agreement is basically saying that your agent is going to get paid X percent or X number of dollars if you close on a particular property. And now the question is who's paying that? Is it the buyer paying it? Is the seller going to still agree to pay it? Is there going to be a meeting of the minds, some sort of negotiation between two parties? But what our listeners need to understand, if you in the state of Arizona sign a buyer-broker exclusive agreement, it is an employment agreement between you and that agent, and it is exclusive. You now are married to that agent. The buyer-broker showing agreement is basically a permission slip, just I need something to get you in the house. And if you buy that particular house and I write that contract for you, then we still need to negotiate how the buyer-broker gets paid. But, so to you, Justin, how is this, now that buyers might be facing more situations where they're having to pay for their representation, how's that impacting qualifying and impacting, your side of things on the lending?
We really haven't seen much of a change at this point. It seems like business as normal at this point. I mean, we've received a few contracts in the last, few days since this has been active, and we really haven't seen anything different. I'm sure we'll see a small percentage of change, but we've come up with ways to increase interested party contributions in order to help use concessions towards paying the buyer's agent if in need. We've also found a way to pay closing costs another way in order to use what would typically be used for closing costs in order to pay the agent. But we haven't seen much change. And my suggestion to all of my clients is, everything's up for negotiation if you're using the seller contribution agreement or seller commission agreement within your contract. So, that's the way we've been instructed on our end. But you guys are handling it well.
All right, if you want more explanation, if you actually want to see these documents and understand what they say, because that really is our warning, understand what's in these documents before you sign anything. I would love to walk you through them. All you got to do is text the letters BBA to 623-AZ-RECON. That's BBA to 623-AZ-RECON. One of the biggest changes, Ryan, without getting into the nuances and the mechanics behind it, but I find it really interesting because, people talk about, the intent of this lawsuit was, to protect sellers and all that bullcrap. But the intent of the lawsuit is so a bunch of lawyers can get paid. Mm-hmm. Can we just be clear about that?
Under the guise of trying to make compensation more transparent.
Right.
And it's just made it muddier than ever.
Absolutely.
Because for me, the biggest change, and I think it's interesting, and we love negotiations, so it's kind of fun.
Right.
But you have a buyer's agent, a listing agent, a buyer, and a seller all now negotiating commission. Mm-hmm. That is crazy to me.
Yep. So I think that for buyers, the best thing to understand is what is like an empathetic view towards the seller and what documents they're required to sign and the changes that's gone there. And what has changed is before it was just a percentage, and then there was an offering to a co-broke to participate, and essentially that listing agent would be paying that portion towards the buyer's representation. That has changed. And so the broad stroke here is there is compensation to the listing agent, there is compensation to unrepresented buyers, and then there's compensation to the co-broke, meaning the buyer's agent. And so understanding that if there is a field put in there for an unrepresented buyer, and you're a buyer that doesn't want to sign a buyer broker agreement, you think that, oh well, I don't want to be locked down to a buyer's agent. I'm just going to go to this open house, or I'm going to call the listing agent in order to go view this property and determine whether or not I want to write an offer. Understand that from there's a good probability that the commission paid has already been pre-negotiated and is going to go towards the listing agent, not towards your potential representation.
Right.
So there's really no way that you will know. And so going back to the guise of transparency, you're not even going to know who is getting paid for what until the closing table, because as far as the listing agent is concerned and the seller, it's none of the buyer's damn business. So ascertaining proper representation, you are not only going to know exactly what's getting paid and to who, but you're going to be able to have a better footing on negotiations.
Well, you did mention that it's muddied things up quite a bit. If you'd like a clear explanation of what is going on and what these documents look like and what these documents say, go ahead and text the letters BBA to 623-AZ-RECON. That's a BBA to 623-AZ-RECON. All right, so this is part of the misinformation. And the first one, we're going to talk about open houses. This, I want to be very, very clear, is Arizona specific. Not all states are following this. So this is going to be Arizona. So if you're in California, it may be different. What I am seeing agents say, and what agents are telling people who walk into their open house, is that in order to tour an open house in Arizona, you have to sign either a buyer-broker exclusive agreement or a buyer-broker showing agreement. That is not true. If it's my listing, first of all, if it's my listing and you just want to see the property at any time, you don't have to sign anything for me to open up that door. But if it's my listing and I'm doing an open house and you want to tour the house and come into my open house, you are not required to sign anything. If it's a open house within the same brokerage, for instance, we're with West USA Realty, if it's my listing, but Ryan is holding the house open, he's not the listing agent, but we're in the same brokerage, you do not have to sign anything. And I just wanted to be clear, because buyers are getting hoodwinked by either very, very sharkish, predatory agents saying, hey, I'm just going to try to get as many buyers to sign this, or the agent is just simply ignorant, which is...
But I don't think that's changed. There's always going to be people out there, but that is one thing. Just a new opportunity for predatory agents out there to take advantage of people who don't know what the hell they're signing.
Right.
The reality is, though, this has been around for forever, and the strong and the good professionals out there have been having this conversation since before it was cool, for lack of better terms, right? Because now we have to do it. But this has been a conversation we've had with every single one of our buyers when we've sat down and done a buyer consult with them. Hey, there's a possibility that you're going to be coming out of pocket to pay us, because we're going to kick over rocks and probably find deals that are off market, because off market deals had no offerings for compensation, and now no listings, whether they're public or not, have any offerings for compensation per the MLS guidelines. So I think that's probably a great place to start when you're having those conversations with anyone that you're interviewing to represent you as a buyer. Is let's just get the money part out of the way, and then let's talk about the different value adds, what you expect out of your buyer representation, and what they expect out of you as a consumer, before you guys start popping locks and looking at homes. And And
Right.
and I think that that's, just like if you were to consult an attorney, they're going to give you 30 minutes or more for free, and then you guys are going to decide whether or not you can work together.
All right, so I just want to be clear. So if you are this weekend in Arizona, you go on an agent, or what? Yeah, yeah. You go on an agent. You go on an open. Go into
Mike
an
gets
open
to
house.
rant, but
Yeah,
I don't.
well, I'm going to stay on topic.
Yeah.
If you want to go into an open house and that agent holding the house open says you have to sign a document in order to see that house, tell them to pound sand. That they don't know what they're talking about, and you don't have to. And I think the other pieces of misinformation out there, and Ryan, you kind of alluded to it, is this agents are telling buyers, and the media is telling buyers in a lot of stories, is if you are a buyer and you want to hire a buyer's agent, you have to pay your buyer's agent. Now, you might have to, but you don't necessarily. It's not a foregone conclusion, because that goes back to we are going to negotiate, and we're still going to try to get the seller to contribute as much as we can to that.
And I'm also seeing a lot of people getting hung up on calling the listing agent first to see what type of compensation is there before they're even going to go look at the home. Again, this is a negotiation. There's no reason for that phone call to even go out. Go look at the property and then start making offers, because the or the seller's agent is still going to have to present every single offer. And if they don't like it, then they're going to either reject it or counter it. And then at that point, you can make decisions. Don't let that handicap you, or don't let that paralyze you as to whether or not you're going to make a run at a property. And if you're a real estate professional out there and you're letting that handicap you, then all you're doing is hurting your own client.
Yeah. All right, last thing, and wrapping this up, Justin, is so now that we have this, we've talked about this buyer-broker exclusive agreement, has a lot of teeth to it. It is an exclusive employment agreement. The buyer-broker showing agreement, not as much teeth. Technically, a client could sign 100 of these with 100 different agents. You can only sign one buyer-broker exclusive agreement. You can only sign one with one agent. So here's my fear, and this is the warning that goes out, is if a buyer doesn't understand what they're signing and they simply just want to go look at a house and they sign this buyer-broker exclusive agreement with some random agent that they don't know, or maybe they know and they don't like, and they definitely don't want to work with, the moment that they sign it, they can be locked into that agent for up to 12 months.
That is scary. Hopefully people are reading the documents that are put in front of them. And I've always said that, make sure you're reading what's put down in front of you to sign. Especially, these are binding contracts. Hopefully they're reading what they're putting down.
All right, if you'd like some more clarification and really like us to sit down and go through our strategies and our negotiating strategies when it comes down to who's paying what, and you want more clarification on these forms, all you got to do is text the letters BBA to 623AZ Recon. That's BBA to 623AZ Recon.